I'm going to show you how to do a 3D interior lighting using Maya and Arnold. The image here in front of you, this is what I have rendered, and I will provide you with the scene that I have downloaded, or I downloaded 3D assets from 3D SketchUp. 3D Sketchfab, sorry about that. And also that I have done some basic added some materials to the objects, and most materials in the scene itself are all AI standard materials. In the scene here that I have done, or I use many different type of lights to light this scene. Here you can see that I use a directional light to mimic the sun coming through the windows doing that. And I use area lights, the window, to help to light up the scene. And I use a point light to create my light for my light bulb. And then back here I use a light called a photometric light that uses a IES file. And basically that is a file that will mimic any type of light bulb that you have or want to simulate. So if you have your favorite light bulb, you can always go to Philips or GE and download your favorite IES. So let me get started with the scene here. So the first thing what I always do is I just like to explore my scene to see what it looks like, and start planning where I want my lights to come into the scene. And also what I like to do is, if I like to check my UVs, do that. You can see that some of these are kind of properly set up, the UVs, but for example, with this one here is, you can see it's not properly set up. So you're more than welcome to UV edit that you yourself you want to. And also what I like to explore is to see what size it is, because it does matter of how big the scene is, of the light is. So for this scene here, I tried this up as a real size situation. Right here, this is the default setting of the grid. Right now I use 12 units by 5. That's the default doing that. So I just did that so you can see how big the scene itself is. And what also I like to do is, before I start off my scene here, I like to go to my rendering settings. So you can just click this little box here that will open my render settings, or you go to Windows, Rendering, and Render settings right here. What I like to do is I like to set all these to 1, and that will help out the testing of the exposure of light. So the first thing here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add all the lights to my scene, and then from there I'm going to get the correct exposure, or the exposure that I want from my scene itself. So the first thing what I like to do is I like to create the main light, the directional light. So create my directional light and move it up here. Size it, sorry about that. It does not matter where you place the directional light, but what does matter is the direction it is pointing. That is the direction where the light is. So I'm going to place it right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my aerial lights. So close those down. So to get, I'm going to use the Arnold aerial light. So I'll click aerial light here. I'm going to size it up. And I'm going to start off here. And what you want to do is you want to try to match the size of the windows where the light is going through. So I'm just going to rotate this like this, and I'm holding J in my keyboard, and that's every 15 degrees. So like this, and size it. You try to size it close as you can. Like that. I'm going to see a little closer. and then I'm going to duplicate this light, and I'm just going to move it here. Duplicate this light. I'm going to move it here. Duplicate this light. Move it over to this window over here. Size as close as you can to the window. Closer, like that. Duplicate this, go over here. This is my glass door for my door here. So like this. Okay, got that. All right. So next, what I like to do is I like to open up my light editor, and I'm going to, it's basically like a outliner, and I'm going to create a folder called my outside lights, and I'm going to grab all my lights and put it into this folder, and I will have another folder with all my interior lights. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename my directional light to sun, and I'm going to leave these as is. And what's nice with this is I can select them all, and then if I select a 7, all of them will be changed, the exposure there. Okay. So next, what I like to do is I like to set up the amount of light I want to come into my scene. So I'm going to my, I don't have a render camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a camera, and that would be my render camera. And I'm going to change my focal length of my render camera to 20. You can change it whatever you want. And I'm going to rename my camera to render camera, so I know which camera I'm rendering from. And I can put a 1 here. I might have many different cameras in the scene for rendering. And I'm going to look through the camera. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place the camera how I want it into the scene. Close this out for now. And turn on my resolution gate. And this is what I'm going to see when I render. So I'm going to line it up how I want my scene to look like. Something like that. That looks nice. So I try to add a little photography aspect where I like to crop in the door. And maybe something like that. I'm looking as I will look in the room itself. All right, that looks pretty good doing that. And then what I like to do is I like to lock my camera doing that. So if you go up here, it has to lock the camera. That means is I can't move my camera around. And I'm going to open up my light editor. And before I start rendering, which I mentioned before, I'm going to open up my render settings. You can click this clapper of the gear, or you go to Windows, Renders, and Rendering Settings. And before I start testing, I'm only testing for the amount of exposure of the scene. So for your Arnold render, I set all these to the lowest setting. That allows me to do a quicker exposure testing. So now if I go right here, I'm going to only start off my sun, and I can isolate that by just clicking this. That means is I'm only using this light to test the scene. So right now I go to render a scene. So right now I have to go to here, select my here. I have increased my exposure, maybe do a 6. Oops, turn it on. Doing that, and I'm going to rotate this I'm trying to place where how my sunlight come in through my windows. Sort of like that. That looks pretty good. So the light here. Another thing here, maybe try it at 4. Yeah, there we go. It's nice to see the wood here, and it has a high key there. And if maybe later on, maybe I can increase it, so maybe it'd be like more of a more high key look. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to my next light here, and if I select here, it's this light here. So I'm only going to test exposure here. So if I hit a test render, looks like I'm getting nothing. I get a in here. So if it's like really dark like that, I usually double mount the light. You don't really want to increase it by 7.4, or if you go like maybe 8, doing that. If it's completely dark like this, just try to doubling doing that. So maybe I go 14, and you can see from that. If light's coming through here, maybe try 15. Doing that, so that looks pretty good. And then what I'm trying to do is I'm just going to select all these lights and type in 15. And then that means all these lights are set for 15. Doing that, so I'm going to test this light. I just saw that I accidentally increased the sample instead of the exposure, so I'm going to fix that. I'm going to grab all my lights here and change that back to 1, and then here I'm going to change all these to 17. Alright, so now this light is only being tested. That looks pretty good. And let's go to the next light. That looks good. And go to this light here. That looks good. And go to the door light. That looks good. Doing that. And I could come back here and change the exposure later, which more likely looks like what I have to do. And the next thing here I want to do now is I'm going to add in my point light. And I'm going to move this down here. Create lights, do a point light, and I'm going to go in here and move my point light, go to the top thing here, line it up, move it over to the where the light is at. That looks about the center. Like that. And looks pretty good. And I'm going to make another folder and call this inside lights. Okay, turn it on. All right, and now I'm going to do a test render of this, and I'm going to increase this by, let's try 17. That looks pretty good. I can decrease it. Let me see. Let me try 15. No, I like 17. Let's do 16. Okay, that's good. Okay. That looks pretty good. All right, let's turn on all the lights to see how it looks like. That's looking pretty good. All right, so the next thing here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my photometric lights, and I'm going to zoom in here. So go here. zoom in. All right. All right, so I'm gonna go into Arnold, lights, and choose my photometric. Turn on my render here. Turn it on so we can see it. There we go. And move it here. I'm gonna hit hold B on my keyboard and I snap it to the middle there. All right. So I'm gonna move this down to the bottom here, and then in my photometric attribute here, I'm going to get the file I want to use. So go photometric, go into my kitchen folder, go to IES. Going to choose for now. Let me do here. Can't decide. Let's do 10. All right. So now I'm going to increase the exposure to, let's try 7, and I'm going to render. I'm going to change my camera to perspective, and I'm going to see here. Okay, what looks like the same thing happened before. So I want to increase this to maybe 10. Let's do 17. Ooh, do too much. There we go. So we get this look here. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to stop it there. And I'm going to move my render over here. And I'm going to duplicate. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to put this into the folder. Take this and duplicate this and turn this on. Move it over here. I can hit V. And I'm going to duplicate this one more time. Turn that on again. Move it here. Hold V down and snap it to here. And now I'm going to take a render. Make sure I'm only going to do these. See how these look like. Turn all these lights off here. Turn these off to now. Do a test render. Okay. That looks pretty good. Okay. Oops. Looks like I actually moved it, not duplicated. Let me just do it again here. Duplicate, turn the light on. Move it over here. Zoom in. Zoom out. That looks pretty good. All right. And let me. Okay, that looks good. All right, so now I'm going to make this into a mesh light. So I'm going to turn all my lights. Oh, actually, I'm going to not do that yet. I'm going to select this object. Let me just stop my render. Zoom in here. Okay, if you notice here, I selected this object in the scene, but you don't see it here. When I was doing the editing for this file, I probably forgot to, I forgot to turn this back into a poly mesh. And now you can see it's showing up here. But what I'm going to do with this here is I'm going to convert this into a light doing that. So I'm going to select this, make a new material. I'm going to select to a standard surface shader. And then what I'm going to do is, oops, I messed up there. Okay, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to make this to a mesh light. And I'm going to make light visible, and I'm going to change the exposure to try 17. Let's give it a try. Okay, let's go. Let's try 20. There we go. I forgot to turn it on. Try 15. That's looking pretty good. I can leave that for now. All right, move this over. All right. That's looking pretty good. All right, so it looks like I have all my lights in my scene here now. Let's see if I need more lights. All right. All right, so one more light I'm going to add is a sky dome. And that is going to give me the white background. So I'm going to sky dome. Turn it on. I'll make it a little bigger, a little more convenient. And I can look through my camera. I'll give it a render. I'm going to turn on actually all my lights now. I want to stop my render. And okay, looks like pretty good. And let's try change it to my camera. So it looks here. I'm going to wait until this is done. Okay, it's done. You can see it took 38 seconds, and we have a lot more to do to change the quality here. Doing that. So what I want to do now is I'm going to open up my render settings, and I'm going to change the quality here. So I want to change this to, let's do 5 in my diffuse. I'm going to just stop this right now. My diffuse, let's do it 5, 4, and my glass to 3. Doing that. And I'll go give a test render, and I will be back when it's done. I'm going to change back this to default setting, and I'm going to stop the render here. And what I like to do is I'm going to change the sample rate of all the lights in my scene. So I'm going to select all my lights, and I'm going to change the sample to, let's say 5, and then I'm going to do a test render. Over here, and it's going to take a little while, and I will be back when it's done. Okay, it got done rendering. You can see it took 3 minutes and 55. And using the this default setting Arnold, just head back to that, and it's looking pretty good. There's some little graininess here. The specular probably needs also a little grainy here. But what I should have done, I probably should have saved the last image in here to compare it. So one way you can compare it is basically pressing this button right here. And now you can see it stored the image here. So the next thing here to help the quality of the image here, I'm going to open up my render settings, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to make sure I just turned off. I'm going to increase my overall global renders to, let's make this to 5, and I'm going to make this to 10. And my specular here, I'm going to make it 4 for now. I'm going to leave. I don't have to worry about my glass, so you cannot really see it because it's being blown out by the sky dome and leave that. I don't have any SS in there. I have no volume indirect lighting in here right now. And so I'm going to make a test render right now. So I'm going to click this. And I will be back when this is done rendering. Okay, it got done rendering. So you can see it took 56 minutes doing that. I'm going to hit here to do a snapshot. And then if you go back and forth, you can see there's a drastic improvement. So, but this is 3 minutes and this is 56 minutes. So another way you can compare these two is to hit right click here, hit set A, and then you go right click here, hit set B. So now you scroll back and forth, you can definitely see it, especially in the darkened areas, doing that. And you know, over here in the counter here as well. And you can see definitely the floor, it definitely helped doing that. One thing here, what I probably should have done before I did this, I entered these numbers in because these are the numbers that I used before I rendered. And probably what I should have done is I probably just done the camera A first and maybe increase it by 4 or 5 and just leave these as the default I had before. I just kind of jumped top of the gun there. It will matter depending on the scene that you have and also the looks you have doing that. The one thing here that I forgot to do also is the here my sunlight. You can see this is not really natural what sun supposed to look like. So what I could have done here is, if I go into my sun here, go to Arnold, there have a place right here. Where are you? The angle right here. So if I change the angle maybe to 4 like that, it will cause a more rounded edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit this right here, and this will only render in this area doing that. So I'm going to hit render, and you can see it might be a little bit too much there. Maybe I could have done the roundness of maybe try 0.4. Oops, I actually hit cancel there accidentally. Well, actually, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try, there we go, try 2. You can see now it asks it more like it more realistic how sun's supposed to behave. And I'm going to hit stop there and do here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into do my which I've done also before is talked about the array def here. This here is right now is the number of bounces it does in the scene or the GI. Right now it does only 1 bounce. If I increase this maybe to let's say 5 and make this into 15, a lot of times good advice is always try to match these two equals 15 doing that. And before I do that also, what I'm going to also do is when you render here, maybe I want more pronounced lights. And this one here is kind of hard to see. What I can do is add an environment doing that. But let you warn you, as soon as you add this environment, it will drastically increase the rendering time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit the here and create a atmospheric, and this is where you want to add the amount. Don't add like 1, 2 here. It would be totally blown out. So what I want to do is I'm just going to add a 2 right here, and I'm going to select here to show you demo. I'm going to do right here, and now I hit render. You can see, yeah, I probably can go even lower. Try 1. There we go. So, but you can see it really, around the surrounding, it really increased the brightness. I can't even, let me try. A bit too little. You know, I guess you can't go there down, so try 1 again. All right, so that looks pretty good. So I'm going to give it a go to render with atmospheric, and also by changing from make it 15 and 5, and this is the number and bounces it goes in the scene. But it looks already good, but it still can need improvement down here in the bottom, up here in the shadows top a little bit. But overall the image here looks good. So I'm going to do my final render doing that, and I will be back when this is done. Okay, it got done rendering. We can see that it took about 2 hours to render this by just adding a atmospheric volume to it. But it gets a really nice like glowy effect, and also you can see that by changing the angle of the direct light, I get the soft edges, which kind of mimics more like how a sun light will hit the floor. So if we go through these here, you can see this one took 3 minutes. You can see kind of pixelated. I just used 3222 doing that. That's the default setting. Then I creased this. You can see it used 510.4, and then the last one here I used 510.4, but also in addition I did 15.5, 1, and 8. As you can see, I probably in this one as well I did the same thing. But that is how you do a interior rendering using Maya and Arnold. Thank you and take care. Bye bye.